What branch of the service were you in and which war?
United States Marine Corps in World War II.
What was your rank?
I attained the rank of sergeant.
Stan, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Mansfield, Massachusetts.
Why did you join?
I just felt I should. Well, I'll tell you, it's a funny story, really. And not funny, but it's an interesting story. A friend of mine had a brother in the Marine Corps, and he went into Boston to sign up with the Marines. And I accompanied him. I went in with him. And they decided to give him a physical. And I decided, well, I might as well take the physical too, so I did. He failed and I passed.
No kidding.
And I enlisted.
How old were you at the time?
I was 17.
So did you have to get your parents to sign?
No, 16 I think you had to.
But 17 they'd accept?
Well, I'm not really sure about that. I don't recall doing that, but maybe that was necessary. I don't know.
Why did you pick the Marine Corps?
I guess because of my friend, primarily.
Do you recall your first days in service?
First days of service, well, that was down in Parris Island in South Carolina.
So you went right from Massachusetts to Parris Island?
Right.
That's where you did your...
It was about a month, maybe 2 months afterwards that... no, let's see. Yeah, in fact, that paper should have the dates of the enlistment on it.
Okay.
In February, when I went
what year?
In 43. February of 43, I signed up and we were shipped off. Went into Boston, took the oath and all that business, and a group of us got on the train and went down to South Carolina.
Do you remember what boot camp was like?
Oh, sure, very vividly, yeah.
Can you tell me what it was like?
Well, it was very rigorous, kind of intimidating at first, but after a while it wasn't so bad. Lots of physical activity, of course, and training on the firing range and so forth. I have had some good friends in the platoon I was in, and strangely enough, I was elected to be a platoon leader. I don't know why. I was the youngest kid in the whole thing, but I was trying to think of some incidents, but...
How long was boot camp?
Gee, I don't really know. It was a couple of months, I think. Oh, one thing that did happen while we were there was a spinal meningitis outbreak, so we were quarantined for maybe 3 weeks while we were there. Just our platoon.
Really?
It was because of one of the members of our platoon.
No one else got it, though?
No one did. And everything came to a halt. We were just in a isolated area on the island. And we just had boxing matches and things like that to entertain ourselves. And then we went back after the crisis was over. We went back to regular duty, and then we shipped out to various places.
Do you remember any of your instructors?
Oh, gee, I used to know that name. He was a nice guy. He was from Boston. Sergeant. Gosh, I wish I could remember the name. I just can't.
That's okay.
But he was a really terrific guy. I mean, I admired him and looked up to him. I was... They called me Chicken.
Chicken?
Because I was the youngest one in Chicky, you know.
Yeah.
I was the youngest kid in the platoon.
Did that name stick?
No, it was just while I was in boot camp. Although one fellow from my platoon in boot camp went with us over to Kwajalein, and he used to call me Chicky now and then. He's now gone.
Wow. After boot camp, where did you go?
I went to NAACP, which is the Naval Aviation... Can't remember what NAACP anyway, in Memphis, Tennessee, to train. That was a training base for the Navy and the Marine Corps for aviation, and I was in the mechanic aviation mechanic group,
What were they
Training
training
to-
you for?
training to be an airplane mechanic.
And how long were you in Tennessee?
Oh, that must have been a couple, 3 months maybe.
And was that basically mechanic training?
Yeah, mechanic training, yeah. And of course the regular athletics and so forth that keep you in shape, marches and
Did you
calisthenics.
choose to be an aviation mechanic?
No, I was
They
assigned to,
choose for
yeah,
you?
they chose for me, yeah.
Did you have any mechanical background?
No, I was just a kid in high school.
Where did you go after Tennessee?
Went to Cherry Point, North Carolina.
What did you
And,
do there?
well, I was continued with that. Cherry Point was a Marine Corps air base for the planes. So I worked as a mechanic there for a while. And then they assigned me to VMB 613, which is a bomber group.
VMB?
Yeah, it means heavier than air marine bomber. V means heavier than air. I don't know why the V, but rather than a balloon, it was a plane, a powered engine plane.
And where did you go from Cherry Point?
Oh, we went out to, gosh, we went all over the place. Went up to Edenton, North Carolina, where the squadron assembled. They began getting in planes that we were going to use overseas. And we flew out of there for a few months, and mostly along the coast. I don't know if you know where Edenton is, but it's near the coast of North Carolina, the Outer Banks.
Edenton?
Edenton, Ednton. Near Newbern. Newbern was the closest town. Little tiny country town. Yeah, we did a lot of flying over the Outer Banks. I remember the pilot I had used to like to go down and buzz some of the islands. You ever heard of the wild horses out there on the Outer Banks?
No.
There's an island out there that's wild horses had taken it over. As far as I know, they're still there.
Really?
And we used to go down
I
and
have heard of
yeah, we used to go down and buzz them and see them run around all over the place. And we took part in maneuvers at Quantico with the other Marines up there. We were in the air, of course, and the other guys were on the ground. And from there we went to, while I was there, I guess they sent us out to Oklahoma for aerial gunnery practice. And we learned to fire machine guns and so forth that we'd have to use in the planes. Spent maybe 2 months out there learning the ropes. Then came back and to Edenton. Then the whole outfit shipped off to Arkansas. Now, I can't remember where we were in Arkansas, although I've got a lot of documentation here.
Okay.
It tells that.
And we'll make copies.
Yeah.
Then. What did you do in Arkansas?
It was just flight training, getting to know I was a tail gunner and a mechanic on the plane.
So as an aviation mechanic, you would actually train so that you weren't a mechanic on the ground, you'd be a mechanic in the air?
Yeah, if in case something went wrong, I could help fix it.
So you were a tail gunner?
Tail
and
gunner
mechanic?
primarily for the actual engagement with the enemy. I was a tail gunner, but primarily I was a mechanic keeping the plane going.
From Arkansas, where'd you go?
Then we went out to, the squadron broke up. They began to, they decided where we were going to go. They never told us where we were going to wind up. But the pilots and some of the crew members, like the navigator and the co-pilot, of course, and I didn't go on this. They went out to Hawaii. They flew out. Or did they fly out? No, they went out on a carrier. As far as Hawaii. And we went to Miramar Naval Base out in San Diego. And we shipped out from there on one of those World War II, what do they call them? I can't remember. My memory is going bad.
Ship or airplane?
A ship.
One of the troop
Yeah.
ships?
George W. Julian, that's all I remember. It
George
was
W. Julian.
Julian was the name of the ship. And it was a Army, owned by the Army, or controlled by the Army. It had a Coast Guard crew with a bunch of Marines on it. They'd taken them to Hawaii, so it was a kind of a mixed bag going out there.
Wow. And you went from San Diego then to
San
Hawaii?
Diego to Hawaii. I remember the first few days on the ocean, we ran into a tremendous storm, and everybody was sick, and there was no food to be had. The cooks were all sick. I mean, it was incredible. And after that it was easy going. We joined a convoy and shipped over to Hawaii, and we stayed in Oahu for, I don't know, maybe a week. I don't think we even got off the ship. They wouldn't allow us off, and we still didn't know where we were going. And finally, the air crew was already there with the planes.
Did you know what crew you were going to be
Oh,
with?
yeah. I was with, well, I've got a picture here. You want to see that now? You want to wait?
No, well, I'll wait and then
Okay,
and I'll
all right.
make a copy.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew the crew I was assigned to. I'd been flying with them back at
so it's the same crew.
Edenton, yeah, New Bern.
All right, so you hooked up with your crew in Hawaii and you stayed there for about a week, and then
Yep.
where did you go?
Well, then we continued on by boat to Kwajalein.
Quadriline?
Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands.
Can you spell that?
I think so.
Or I can look it up.
Yeah. Kwajalein.
You didn't know until you got there?
That's
where
right.
You were going?
Yeah,
So
they
knew
didn't
that
tell
was
us.
your assignment.
We arrived there late in December, just before Christmas.
So this is still 1943?
I believe it's 1944 now.
December of 1944?
Yep.
Do you remember arriving there?
Oh yes,
What
I
it
do.
was like?
Yeah.
What was your impression?
Well, it was beautiful. This beautiful island, but of course there were no trees on it because the Army had taken it from the Japanese maybe a month before we arrived, and it had been pretty well demolished with bombs and so forth. All the trees, very few trees left, except the surrounding islands were fine. They were small little islands. It's an atoll, you know. In fact, I've got a picture of it here somewhere, and well, you can see that later.
Okay.
But it was a beautiful lagoon, and I remember the weather conditions were unreal. I thought we were very close to the equator, and I thought it was going to be intensely hot, but it wasn't. It was a nice offshore breeze all the time. It was in the low 80s maybe. Sometimes it go down into the 70s. And once a day, without fail, in the afternoon it would rain. It was all so consistent. It was unbelievable. And a beautiful lagoon to swim in, full of, like swimming in a goldfish bowl. It was so beautiful. Coral reefs and multicolored fish, and it was just lovely. And of course the airfield was right there on the island. And we were barracks there. In fact, I have a picture of the barracks. Just came the other day from the group. I'm still in contact with this group, BMB 613, and have been since back in late 90s. They contacted me. I didn't realize they had the group, but it's still in existence. And I have letters from them and saw that other documentation you might be interested in.
So when you landed, then you were assigned to barracks?
Yep.
And your crew arrived?
Yep.
And your job assignment was still tail
Still a
runner
mechanic,
and
right.
mechanic?
Yep. And we started flying mostly security patrols around that area. There were a lot of bypassed islands where the Japanese were still holed up, but we just wanted to make sure they were inactive. Any submarines or so forth. We did do a number of submarine bombing runs, and I don't know how many we destroyed. I have no idea, but
How often did you go out on patrols?
a couple of times a week.
And typically, what would that be like? Like
Very
all day?
monotonous, boring.
Did you ever
Just
see
flying.
combat?
I never did. There were no Japanese planes in the area, so my role as a tail gunner was non-productive, to say the least. We did bombing runs and things like that on targets that the Navy put out for us to keep trained on, and things like that. But I never saw any actual combat. The unit did. They went to an island called Ponape, which was a bypassed island. They had an airfield on there, and we went over and we bombed that airfield, and we lost one plane, and one of the crewmen in another plane was killed by shrapnel. And unfortunately, the pilot of the plane that went down, he and his brother were both in our unit, so he left the brother
Wow.
behind, and he's still active in the unit. Robert Love is his name.
Wow.
So he lost his brother, and it was devastating to the whole unit. Of course, we all knew each other and closely associated. So, but that was the only bad incident we had.
How long were you stationed?
It must have been about a year and a half, maybe, and then the war ended. We fully expected to move up for the invasion of Japan, of course, and then the atomic bomb was dropped over Nagasaki, and that was the end of that. So, fortunately, we all came home.
Can you remember any memorable experiences while you were stationed there?
Nothing dramatic or anything. They were just no, I really can't.
What was life like? What was a typical day when you weren't flying on a security patrol?
Well, swimming in the lagoon. That's every
Do you have any
day.
pictures of the islands where you were barracks?
Yes, I do.
Oh, great. Did you receive any medals or citations?
Good conduct medal and simple little things. Nothing. I can't remember really what they were, but.
How did you stay in touch with family while you were overseas?
Oh, we weren't allowed to write letters. They were all censored before they were shipped off, so we couldn't tell them where we were. So
So actually your
folks
family
never
at home
knew.
didn't know where
They
you were
didn't know where I
stationed?
was. No. I can remember the letter I wrote home when the war was over, and I was able to tell them where I was.
And that was the first they knew?
Yeah, it is.
Wow. Living conditions. What was the food like?
I don't really remember it. I'm sure it was adequate because I was fine. I don't remember anything bad about it, so it must have been fine.
And you lived in the barracks. What was that like? Can
It
you
was
describe that?
Well, it's just a wooden barracks that the Army had built when they were there, and after they invaded and took over the island, they put up barracks, and then they moved off, and we came in and took over. They were pretty desolate when we came there, and so they had to be refurbished and beds and things like that put in. We slept on the floor for a while, and then we finally got enough cots and things for us to live.
How many units were stationed on that island?
Just us. We were the
You were
only
the only
unit.
unit?
We were
Was
the
it a
only
small
unit. It's
island?
a very small island, yeah.
Was there anything special that you did for good luck?
Good luck. Gee, I don't think so.
You know how some of them
Nothing.
carry rabbit's foot?
Maybe some guys did, but I wasn't into that sort of thing.
How did you entertain yourselves? Besides swimming in the lagoon?
That was the main entertainment.
Did they have
yeah.
any USO shows or anything like
They
that?
did, as a matter of fact. There's one came through with Boris Karloff.
Really?
Yeah, and in fact, I got pictures of that. And Gertrude Lawrence, maybe? I think she was in that group. I do remember that. That was quite an event for us, and that was just, as far as I know, that was the only USO show that came through.
What else did you have for entertainment? Did you have movies or anything like that?
Oh yeah, they used to have a place where they showed movies. Yeah.
All right, now you said you left as a sergeant. When were you promoted?
I think it was on Kwajalein that I was promoted to sergeant.
Did you go on leave at all?
Not from there, no. Some of the pilots did. They went to Hawaii for R&R.
Did you get any R&R while you were in the service?
No.
You never got to see Hawaii?
No, well, other than
Other than the harbor?
the brief stop when we went over by boat, yeah.
Did you go anywhere else while you were in the service?
You mean in foreign countries, I think?
Yeah.
No. Other than other surrounding islands, or in the Marshall Islands, in a Weetalk, and a number of them, Roy Namor. And
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
I'm sure there were, but I really
Did you
can't.
guys play pranks on each other?
Oh, I'm sure there was a lot of that stuff going on, yeah. In fact, the fellow that slept next to me in the barracks, his name was John Gavin. And there's a good story to tell about him. But I used to snore bad, and he carried a stick, and every night he'd poke me and wake me up from snoring. So that was a routine. I
Did it cure
remember
you
that.
from snoring?
It never cured me. I finally had an operation for sleep apnea, but that was later in life. But let me tell you a story about John. John was from Schenectady, New York, and still lives there. I hear from him occasionally. And he was out on the lagoon one day with another friend, and I don't know if they were in a little boat or just swimming. And John wanted to go dive down and look at some coral reef formation, and he had a class ring. And he gave it to this friend to hold for him, and he went down, and the friend dropped it. And they searched the whole day and the next day for that ring, and they could not find it. Well, 40 years later, John gets a call from someone on Kwajalein. They found his ring.
Oh my heavens.
And they traced it. All it had was the name of the school, no city or state or anything like that. St. Mary's Academy or St. Mary's is his high school anyway. I'm not sure if it's St. Mary's, but St. something. And his initials in the back. And this guy out there and his wife were stationed out there, and they're still there. In fact, that's what this tape is. This is their tape of the island, which you might like to look at. They found the ring, and first of all, they went by the name of the school, and they went through all the states in the United States till they found the school in Schenectady. And then they called them and told them they had a ring from their school with the name, with the initials such and such in it, and then such certain date, of course, when John graduated. And they looked it up in the old archives, and they found his name, and they finally made contact with him.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
40 years
40,
later.
I'm not sure the exact time interval, but it was a long time.
Oh, wow. He
Yeah.
must have been thrilled.
Oh, he was, and he made, believe it or not, by Ripley. He was in all the papers for a while. That was about 10 years ago, maybe, that this happened. And
Wow.
since then, I've seen a lot of ring stories of people in the Hartford Current. I always clip it out and send it to John.
Of people who've lost their rings
Yeah,
and are later recovered.
there was one just recently.
Where did they find it? In the water
It was
somewhere?
in the lagoon. Yeah.
Wasn't that great, though, that they pursued it and tracked it?
Oh, yeah. That was an amazing thing that they really were able to find out where it was, where it belonged.
Wow. What did you think of fellow soldiers and officers? Well, I guess you don't call them soldiers. Another Marine told me you don't call them soldiers, they're Marines.
No, we're not soldiers. We're Marines.
What did you think of your fellow Marines?
Oh, I got along great with them all. Yeah, there was no one I had any disagreements with. And my pilot, I idolized the guy. He was my
Do you
hero.
remember his name?
Yes, Wayne Youngren.
How do you spell his last name?
Youngren. And he still is living. He and his wife Gwen live out in Minnesota and have for all their life, actually.
Did you stay with the same crew the entire time?
Yes,
you
I
were there?
did. Yeah.
Did you keep a personal diary?
No, unfortunately, I wish I had. Looking back on it, I really wish I had.
Did you stay in touch with your crew after you got out of the service?
No, I didn't. We were discharged from Cherry Point, North Carolina, and I came north with a couple of buddies of mine, and they both lived in New York City. Bob Dillon and Chuck Conato. And Bob invited me to stay with him for a few days in New York and show me the city, because I'd never been there before. And I did. And we had a good time. Went to Jack Dempsey's and for dinner and lunch and things like that, and just saw the town. And I really enjoyed it. Then I proceeded on home. Chuck moved to Cape Cod. He still lives there. I think last I heard he's going to move though. In the last letter.
How do you spell his last name?
C-O-N-N-A-T-O. Or maybe it's C-A-N-N-O-T-O.
So you didn't keep in touch with any of the other members of your crew?
No. In later years, though, in the 90s, like I said, they finally ran me down, and they had started a group of members of our VMB 613, and they had been gathering for 2 or 3 years apparently, and they were trying to track down members of the group that they hadn't found, and somehow or other they got a hold of me.
Did that group start immediately after World War II?
That I'm not sure of. There may be information in here in this literature that maybe give you a clue to that.
And there probably is some stuff on the internet. Do they have a website?
I think they do, yeah, and that's also in there somewhere.
It's called VMB 613?
16, yeah.
And is that just your unit, or was it several units?
No, just ours.
Wow.
That was a...
How many people do you think would be in that?
150 maybe.
Wow. So there were 150 of you all in that unit,
Yeah.
on that island?
Yes. I'm not sure of those figures, but around that, yeah.
Do you when did you leave the Marshall Islands?
Well, it was when the war was over at the end of the term there. And
where were you when you heard about? Did you hear about the end of the war in Europe?
no,
first?
yeah, oh yeah, sure, we heard that. Yeah, we knew that was over. And actually, when, I don't know, there's still some speculation about this, but maybe that bomber, the Enola Gay that bombed in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, might have landed on our island on the trip over to, I have a picture of a B-29 on the runway.
Really?
Now, I don't think that was it, but it could very well have been, because that was a stopping point for a lot of bombers and things, heavy bombers that were heading to Japan for the invasion.
And what would they stop for? Fuel?
Just refueling and so forth, if they get a hot meal or on their way again.
Were you expecting to be part of the group that invaded Japan?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We were expecting to move up any day. Yeah,
So
they had told us we were, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we were getting prepared for it.
What were your feelings about that?
Oh, I was kind of excited about it. I think most people were.
And where were you when you heard about the bombing of Japan?
Well, we were on Kwajalein, of course, and it didn't mean much to us at the time, but shortly afterward, of course, it did. It meant a lot, because it meant that the war was over.
Do you remember where you were when you heard that the war was over?
No, not really. Probably swimming in the lagoon.
When the war ended, did they ship you home immediately?
Well, maybe a month later. They had to get all the planes we had on the island, they bulldozed them into the ocean, which flabbergasted me. That's one thing I could not understand why they did that.
They bulldozed the airplanes?
Yeah, all those airplanes we had into the ocean.
How many do you think it was?
Well, we had 13 airplanes.
What kind of planes were they?
Oh, PBJs. That's a Navy designation, the Army designation of B-25.
PBJs?
Yeah.
They were B-25s?
B-25s.
Wow, you'd think they would have flown them home.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I couldn't figure that out.
So they're probably all
And they were all-
moon over there now?
Oh, yeah, sure. They are.
Wow. Do you recall the day you left the island?
Just climbing up the nets on the boat to get in it and head home. You know, they didn't have a gangway or anything like that. You had to climb up the nets on the side of the
Which
boat.
is pretty tricky, I guess, anyway, from what I
Yeah,
hear.
oh yeah.
And where did you go when you got to the United States?
We went to San Francisco, as I recall. And we were processed there and, you know, got physicals and all that business to make sure we weren't carrying any contagious disease and we stayed there maybe a couple of weeks and then by railroad we went to North Carolina again, Sherry Point. We stayed there for another month maybe and went through the discharge process. Which
What
was...
were you doing all this time when you were in San Francisco and Cherry Point? Did they have jobs for you to do?
Oh yeah, we used to have to muster every morning and there'd be something to do. Menial
So you weren't just
tasks.
hanging out doing
No,
nothing?
no.
And then they discharged you from Cherry Point?
That's right.
What did you do immediately after discharge?
Well, I went home with my friend Bob Dylan and Chuck Conato and stopped off in New York for a week or two, and then I went home.
To Massachusetts?
Yep. Completely unannounced to my mother and father. They didn't know I was arriving. They didn't know I was been discharged.
Really? You didn't call them when you got
I
back to
did
the
not,
United
no.
States?
I don't think I even knew their number after all those years.
Wow. Did you, were you trying to surprise them or you just...
Yeah, that was it. I was trying to be a surprise. Of course, no one was home when they arrived. They both worked, and my sisters, I had two sisters, and they were in school. So
you got home to an empty house and then
yeah,
you must have been
that's
surprised
right.
when they
Yes,
got
they
home.
did. They were.
What did you do immediately after getting home? Did you go to work?
Well, no, I didn't. We were on the GI Bill, of course. You got, I can't remember now what the rate was, but it wasn't much. Once a month you got a check for $24 or something like that. And but I did find a job eventually. I got sick of that business, and living at home, and I started back to school again because I never graduated from high school.
Wow.
I went into my senior year.
So did you go back to a high school or did you...
Yeah, I did. I went to Dean Academy in Franklin, Massachusetts to get my high school degree. And
So
then
what year were you in? Was it your senior year?
that was my senior year, yeah.
You must have been somewhat of a celebrity.
Oh, not really. There's a bunch of people in the same situation.
Really?
Oh,
So they
yeah.
were
Oh,
alive
yeah.
you
Oh,
in your
sure.
Senior year?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, there were a group of us that went from Mansfield up to Franklin in one of the guys' cars. There were at least 4 or 5 of us that went every day. And from other towns all over the area. The Dean Academy was a nice school, and that they were offering these courses for people that had gotten out of the service that hadn't received their degrees yet. So it worked out fine.
So you finished your senior year of high school?
Yeah.
And what year then did you graduate?
Oh, gee, that must have been in 1946, maybe 47. Yeah, 47, I think is. 46 was the end of the war. 47 was the following year I went to school.
What did you do after graduating from high school?
Well, my girlfriend's father was a graduate of Bates up in Lewiston, Maine, and I wanted to go to college, and he got me in up there as a graduate.
So
He had a little bit of pull up
Bates
there,
College
so I
in
went to
Maine?
Bates College in Lewiston, Maine.
And what were you studying for?
I finally wound up with a degree in biology. I was hoping to go to medical school, but never panned out. By the time I graduated from there, I had 2 children and a wife. And
That kind of puts a crimp in
yeah,
things.
it did. It did, because medical school requires everything you have. No, you can't go with a family. Well, you could, but it'd be unusual.
So you're a Bates graduate with a BS
BS in biology, yeah.
biology?
Yeah.
Did you...
Derry was born up there. She was our first child.
Oh.
I have pictures of her.
Did you go through Bates on the GI Bill?
Yes. Yep, which was terrific. And it's amazing, the cost of college today, I think was $1,500 a year up there at the time.
Wow. Did you join any veterans organizations?
No, completely dropped out of it entirely.
Did you stay in touch with any of the guys in your unit? I know you're in touch with them now, but did you stay in touch with them at that time?
I corresponded for a while with Bob Dylan, but that's kind of faded out, and that was it until they got in touch with me.
Okay, now you said that there were, that this VMB 613 started, did they have reunions? How did they get in touch with you? Do you know?
By phone. In fact, let me just dig this out now. If I can find it here. This was kind of interesting too. I think it's in here. This is from Bob Cherry, who was the organizer of this reunion group. And he sent out a monthly newsletter to everybody at the time. In his letter he sent to me on 15th of January 1988, that's when he first got in touch with me. It says, "Dear Stan, it was great talking to you on the phone today. It is still a real thrill to find another 613er. I am enclosing the material which I promised you. All of the information on the reunion is in one of the letters. I hope that you will be able to contact some other of the mech gunners," that's what I was called, "as we would love to have you all at the reunion. As I told you, the experience is unbelievable, trust me. Incidentally, you may want to drop a line to John Brunelli, postmaster of Mansfield, Massachusetts. He really took the ball and ran with it after I sent him the first letter asking if he could forward it to you. He has 4 long-distance phone calls to me at his expense. And in addition, he had enlisted the aid of the Council on Aging and a couple of lady groups in the area to track you down. He is a NAM veteran himself and just couldn't be a nicer guy." So that was the first letter I'd received the phone call prior to that, but...
So that was 1988. Now, had they had any reunions?
Oh yes, they were having a yearly reunion at the time. And this one, the one that was coming up, was in Norfolk, Virginia.
Did you go?
Oh yes. In fact, that picture of Bev and I getting on the boat is from Norfolk, Virginia in 1988.
Wow, so that was your first reunion?
Yes.
How many of your old buddies did you get to see? How many guys
A lot of them. It was a lot of us for first timers too, which was interesting. And I couldn't give you the names now, but like Bob Dylan, he wasn't there, and Wayne Ritter, who was another good friend of mine, he wasn't there. And
How about your pilot?
he was there. Yeah, Wayne and Gwen.
First time you had seen him?
First time we'd seen him. Yep.
Wow. And how many reunions did you have after that?
There's been one they were having them every year for a while, and then it began to get every 2 years and every 3 years. And I never went to another one. They were always somewhere West Coast, down in Florida. It's just too far. So I never went to another one. They never had one close enough.
Are they still having them?
Yes, they're having one. In fact, they just had one down in Pensacola, I believe, Florida, this last year. And of course, I got all the information on that. They always send a newsletter out. But there's something else in here, I wonder, pertaining to this. What the heck was it? Not too well organized here.
That's okay.
Thought I had it right on the top, but I must have misplaced it somehow or other.
So So now they probably won't have another reunion for how long?
Oh, another
Couple
3 years probably. And of course they're getting smaller and smaller all the time.
Right.
Because people are dying off. Like Bob Dylan died and Chuck Canaro. Chuck Canaro's still alive, but a lot of my good buddies are gone. Like those two in that picture, they're gone. And
Well, that's the problem now with the World War II.
oh, sure. You know, I'm 79, and I was the
You're
youngest.
probably-
I was the
you
youngest
were,
one in the unit, so doesn't leave many of us left. Well, I don't know where that is, but I'll find it later. But
That's okay, and then I'll make copies
Yeah.
and send in. You think you'll be able to attend any of the other reunions now?
well, I hope if they have them close enough, I certainly would love to.
Because now it must be down to a smaller group.
Oh, it is,
You know?
definitely, yeah. Yeah, there aren't many that go now. But,
Are you a member of any veterans organizations now,
no,
other than your unit?
that's the only one, just the EMB 613.
What did you do as a career after the war? Once you got your biology degree, what did you do with
Well, I worked as a drug detailer for the Upjohn Company for about 3 years, and then I changed jobs with another. Upjohn is no longer in existence, but I went with another small outfit from Massachusetts. Was it Massachusetts? No, it was New Hampshire. Small business in New Hampshire, and I moved from. I was in Maine with the Upjohn Company for about a year and a half, and in the Portland area. I loved it up there. It was just great. I still love Maine, but I changed jobs, and I moved down to Westboro, Massachusetts, and the other job didn't pan out, so I left that, and I went to work with Dr. Min Chu Chang, who was the developer of the pill for ladies. And I worked with him at the Worcester Foundation for Experimental Biology. And I wasn't working on the pill as such. I might have done some of the work there, but not much. I was working on the artificial insemination of cattle. I used to go to the stock farm and collect bull semen and bring it back so he could do his experiments. And we worked with rabbits, and it was a very interesting job. I loved it. But it didn't pay much, and I really needed something that paid a little bit more. So I came down here to Connecticut, United Aircraft, and I got a job there in the lab, working on instrumentation, which was entirely new to me. I'd been a biologist. Now I was working on electronics and machines like that, and I enjoyed that too. I really loved it. I picked it up pretty fast. I took a lot of courses around the area at the University of Hartford, and when they had a campus on down in the middle of the city. I don't know if you remember that, but there was one down there. And took various math courses and electrical engineering courses and so forth. And then I left there and went into business on my own with a friend of mine in Windsor. My wife and I had moved to Windsor by that time.
What kind of a business was it?
It was a trash business. And we had customers all over Connecticut. I used to go down to Waterbury every day with a trash truck. And finally there was some disagreements with this friend of mine. And I finally left there and went to combustion engineering in Windsor. I worked for them in the laboratory again for quite a while. And then to supplement my income, I took a job in Constitution Plaza as a security guard. And you know that big oval building, what's that one that shaped like a boat?
The boat building.
Phoenix, is it?
Yes, I think
Phoenix,
that's what
Phoenix
it was.
building, yeah. I worked there, And I met a guy, another guard, and he and I used to chum around a lot. And he told me about Hartford Hospital looking for people. And so I went over to Hartford Hospital, applied there, and they gave me a job in the laboratory, back into biology again.
Wow.
But I was working on the instrumentation. So that's where my career ended up. I worked for 25 years in the laboratory at Hartford Hospital.
Wow, and that's where you retired from?
Yeah, I retired from there, and I still go in once a week as a volunteer on the 8th floor. So I still keep in touch there, and I still see my old friends. They're thinning out very fast too, but yeah.
Wow. And we know, all right, you already said you got married, and how many children did you have?
4. Yeah, Derry and Kathy and Mary Ann and Mark.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Well, yeah, through the years, yes, I've dwelled on it and thought about it. I think war is stupid. I disagree with Bush entirely on his approach to the war. There ought to be a better way for people to work out their differences than killing each other.
Did any of your children serve in the military?
No. My grandchildren have, but
Your grandchildren have served in the military?
Yeah, my grandson Jerry is out in Wyoming with the Army. He's an MP. His sister was in the Connecticut National Guard. She may still be, as far as I know. I don't see much of her, but she and Jerry were both.
How did your service and experiences in the military affect your life?
I'm sure they have, but I can't really pin it down and give you a concrete example.
How do you think your life would have been different had you not served?
You mean if there had been no war, or I just hadn't served?
If there'd been no war and you hadn't served?
Oh, well, it would probably been entirely different. I'd probably never gone to college because I wouldn't have had the GI Bill. That was one positive aspect of the war for me. And for a lot of guys, we had never gone to college. Just couldn't have done it. My folks didn't have enough money to do that for me. So who knows? I'd probably wound up working at the Foxborough Company like my mother and father, which was a company that made instrumentation. So.
Is there anything else that you can think of from your military experience that you could tell?
Well, not off the top of my head. I really enjoyed the experience as a whole. I mean, I didn't really see active combat, although our unit was engaged in it. I never was involved directly in it. I kind of regret that because I always felt I just didn't do my part for some reason, but it was just the circumstances. I had no control over it.
Right. Well, and Stan, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story with me and the Library of Congress, and I'd like to thank you for your service. And there will be pictures and documents attached to this record.